Good evening and welcome to the American media. It's Sunday, July 20th, and tonight we're unpacking everything from the Trump administration's latest legal maneuvers to a progressive political upset in New York, Coldplay concert scandal fallout, and major health alerts sweeping the nation. Whether it's the halls of Congress or the streets of Halong Bay, the pace of news isn't slowing down, so let's get right to it. President Donald Trump is once again center stage. He's now demanding the release of Jeffrey Epstein's grand jury records, calling it long overdue. Trump argues the public has a right to transparency, but House Democrats are warning this could politicize sealed proceedings and endanger victims. The Department of Justice is carefully weighing how to unseal parts of the case while protecting identities. And in a bold legal step, Trump filed a defamation lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, alleging the outlet knowingly published false claims tying him to Epstein and current grand jury efforts. His legal team says the article recklessly disregarded the truth, while press freedom advocates are concerned this could have chilling effects on investigative reporting. Meanwhile, the 6-month checkpoint of Trump's second term has analysts divided. His administration has expanded executive authority, rolled back immigration programs, leaned hard on NATO allies, and nominated judges with deeply polarizing records. Supporters tout economic and military restoration. Critics warn of growing institutional erosion. On Capitol Hill, the House just passed a rare $9 billion rescission package, cutting funds from public broadcasting, foreign aid, housing, and Medicaid. It's one of the few successful uses of the 1974 Budget Act in recent years to undo already approved spending. And in a major shake-up for the Democratic Party, Zohran Mamdani, a Democratic socialist, scored a surprise win in New York's mayoral primary, defeating a Cuomo-backed rival. His platform, housing justice, free public transit, and aggressive environmental reform, sparking new momentum for the party's progressive wing. And that progressive energy is showing up across the nation. Tens of thousands took to the streets this week in Good Trouble Lives On protests, a coordinated march honouring the late Congressman John Lewis. Protesters rallied in major US cities against immigration raids, voting rights restrictions, and healthcare cuts. Organisers say the movement is building serious momentum heading into the 2026 midterm elections. These protests are part memorial, part mobilisation, with younger voters, especially Gen Z activists, at the forefront of the effort. Many see them as the next evolution of the 2020 protest era, a reminder that good trouble still matters. Now to the economy, where there's a sense of cautious optimism. The Federal Reserve held interest rates steady, citing stable inflation and healthy labour markets. Investors cheered. The S&P 500 jumped over 5% this week, with tech stocks soaring on expectations of continued growth. In the energy sector, Chevron has completed its $53 billion acquisition of Hess Corporation, gaining massive access to Guyana's offshore oil fields. This gives Chevron a major edge globally, especially against rival ExxonMobil, who opposed the deal. British conglomerate Reckitt Benckiser is also making moves, selling its home care product division to private equity firm Advent International for $4.8 billion. The company says it wants to narrow its focus to health and nutrition brands. On the tech front, Nvidia, a key player in the global AI race, is once again defending its business practices. Under intense scrutiny from both lawmakers and the public, the company clarified this week that its recent AI chip exports to China were fully compliant with US regulations. CEO Jensen Huang stated that the shipments were made with federal approval and without any backdoor lobbying. The clarification comes as tensions mount in the broader US-China technology rivalry. With AI and semiconductors now central to both national security and economic competition, Nvidia's compliance is being watched closely, not just in Washington, but also by markets across the globe. Shifting to trade, President Trump is stirring the pot once again with new tariff threats. On Thursday, he proposed imposing tariffs of up to 30% on imports from the European Union and Mexico, citing what he described as unfair trade imbalances. The announcement sent immediate ripples through global markets. Diplomatic leaders in Brussels and Mexico City responded with concern, warning that a renewed trade war could destabilize global supply chains already under strain from geopolitical conflicts and climate-related disruptions. Economists say it's too early to tell whether the tariffs will materialize or whether they're a strategic move ahead of upcoming international trade talks. But business leaders on both sides of the Atlantic are already bracing for possible cost increases and market volatility. Now to the lighter and sometimes scandalous side of the news. Pop culture and public drama are having another moment. A Silicon Valley soap opera unfolded this week when Colin Radner, CEO of software giant Luxus, was caught in a viral scandal. He was photographed kissing an unidentified woman at a Coldplay concert in San Francisco, despite being publicly married to his wife of 12 years, Emily Radner. The photos sparked a frenzy online and ignited widespread debates about celebrity privacy, personal accountability, and tech world ethics. Radner issued a formal statement calling the incident a moment of weakness and has since taken an indefinite leave of absence from the company. But the culture world isn't all scandal this week. Some nostalgic joy returned to gamers everywhere with the release of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 remastered. The reboot combines sharp new graphics, fresh levels, and classic arcade-style gameplay. Fans say the game perfectly captures the magic of the early 2000s while still feeling modern. Entertainment Weekly's must-see weekend list is packed with throwbacks and drama. Highlights include the final season of The Summer I Turned Pretty, a live-streamed performance of Heathers the Musical, and a crisp 4K re-release of the dark comedy The Assassination Bureau. Nostalgia is clearly in, and teenage angst is trending too. And in star-studded sightings, Rihanna was seen shopping in LA with her kids, casual and cool as always. Jennifer Lopez stunned during a fashion shoot in Madrid. Kate Middleton made headlines attending Wimbledon in classic royal style. And Lady Gaga delivered a theatrical experimental performance at a Berlin music festival that's already being called genre-breaking. Meanwhile, Katy Perry's Lifetimes tour continues to pack stadiums worldwide. Her Tokyo performance this weekend will feature holographic visuals, neon stage effects, and a blend of futuristic soundscapes with old-school pop hooks. The tour heads to Australia next. And fans of Blackpink lined up overnight in Los Angeles this week for a special streetwear collaboration between the K-pop supergroup and the NBA and MLB. The limited edition Lakers-Dodgers collection featured jackets, jerseys, and exclusive photocard bundles, blending sports culture with Korean fashion influence. But the music world also mourned a legend. Connie Francis, whose voice defined the early pop era with hits like Where the Boys Are, passed away at the age of 87. Known for her emotional delivery and trailblazing career, Francis had recently enjoyed a surprising resurgence on TikTok, with many Gen Z users discovering her classics for the first time. Tributes are pouring in from across the entertainment industry. Turning now to health, and there's a lot to keep an eye on. A new COVID-19 wave is underway in the US, driven by emerging variants LP81 and XFG, both of which appear to be more transmissible than previous strains. While hospitalization rates remain lower than in previous years, the CDC has issued warnings for vulnerable populations, including seniors, immunocompromised individuals, and those with chronic health conditions, to get updated booster shots as soon as possible. Health officials say they're watching carefully to see whether this wave levels off or continues into the fall. Public health departments have resumed outreach in some areas, including free testing and booster clinics. In Arizona, health authorities have confirmed a fatal case of pneumonic plague, the most contagious and dangerous form of the disease. The case was reported in the Flagstaff area, and officials believe it was likely contracted from a wild animal or infected flea. Though rare, pneumonic plague spreads through respiratory droplets and can be deadly if not treated quickly. State officials emphasise that the case appears isolated, but they're urging rural residents to stay cautious, especially when handling animals or spending time outdoors. Meanwhile, a major measles outbreak continues to spread across the US, with more than 1,300 confirmed cases in 23 states. It's the worst outbreak in over 30 years. Public health experts link the surge to declining vaccination rates, particularly in communities with rising vaccine skepticism. Some schools have begun re-evaluating immunisation policies ahead of the fall semester. Globally, the World Health Organization issued a global alert on arboviruses, including dengue, Zika and chikungunya, all of which are spreading rapidly through Southeast Asia, Latin America and parts of Africa due to warmer temperatures and increased mosquito activity. The good news? 2 new chikungunya vaccines were recently approved, and health ministries in Brazil, Indonesia and Nigeria have begun discussing regional rollout plans. Still, officials warn that public education and infrastructure are just as critical as medical tools when battling mosquito-borne outbreaks. And finally, cybersecurity in healthcare is once again in the spotlight. Nearly 400 healthcare data breaches have been reported to the Department of Health and Human Services in just the first half of 2025, affecting more than 31 million individuals. Experts say a combination of ransomware attacks and third-party software vulnerabilities are to blame. The breaches include hospitals, insurance companies, and even patient portals. Investigations are ongoing, and there are renewed calls for stricter data protections in the health sector. Let's take a look now at major developments unfolding around the world. In Bogotá, Colombia, diplomats from 32 nations met this week for a high-stakes peace summit aimed at ending the Gaza conflict. While no binding agreement came out of the summit, 12 countries, including Spain, Argentina and Turkey, signed on to draft preliminary terms for a ceasefire framework. The summit marked a notable shift in diplomatic momentum as nations outside of traditional power blocs seek to lead new peace initiatives. Observers say it reflects growing frustration with the prolonged conflict and a lack of progress through established UN channels. Back in Europe, a landmark agreement was reached between 2 of the continent's powerhouses. The UK and Germany signed the Kensington Treaty, a sweeping post-Brexit pact reaffirming military cooperation, AI research partnerships, and mutual cybersecurity standards. The agreement is being hailed as a modernised evolution of the historic special relationship, especially in an era of rising cyber threats and strategic AI competition. In Asia, Typhoon Wifa made landfall near Hong Kong this week, bringing winds over 120 kilometers per hour and causing widespread disruption. Cathay Pacific grounded dozens of flights, ferries were cancelled, and much of Kowloon experienced temporary flooding. Emergency crews worked around the clock to manage minor structural damage, and residents are being advised to stay indoors as cleanup continues. During a trade-focused visit to Shanghai, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese reaffirmed the country's commitment to the One China policy, while also emphasising Australia's opposition to any military escalation in the Taiwan Strait. The comments come at a time of increased naval activity from both the US and China in the Indo-Pacific, and they reflect Canberra's careful balancing act between trade reliance and regional security concerns. In Spain, wildfires just outside Madrid sent huge plumes of smoke across the capital, reducing visibility and triggering air quality alerts. Firefighters are battling high winds and scorching temperatures, and several suburbs have been ordered to evacuate. Environmental groups point to a worsening trend as climate change makes wildfires in southern Europe more frequent and intense. And in Vietnam, tragedy struck in Ha Long Bay, one of the country's most famous tourist destinations, when a tour boat carrying more than 50 people capsized during a sudden thunderstorm. At least 27 people have been confirmed dead, and search and rescue teams continue to work through challenging weather conditions. The Vietnamese government has pledged to review and revise maritime safety protocols for tourist operations. Finally, Britain imposed sanctions on 6 Russian intelligence officers believed to be responsible for the 2022 bombing of a Ukrainian theatre in Mariupol. A recent UN investigation found that civilians, including children, were deliberately targeted. The sanctions mark a renewed Western push for accountability as the war in Ukraine enters another tense phase. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. A whirlwind of political tension, economic uncertainty, cultural shifts, and global crises. From Trump's courtroom battles and renewed calls for transparency to trade threats, data breaches, and the quiet heroism of medical staff fighting outbreaks. Today's stories remind us that the forces shaping our world are both urgent and interconnected. In one part of the globe, tariffs might shake economies. In another, a wildfire threatens lives. A pop icon dies, a political movement surges, and in the middle of it all, people continue to protest, vote, build, dance, and speak out. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by it all, but journalism at its best offers clarity and hopefully a little perspective. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. Be sure to follow us online and subscribe. For the world now, this is the American Media. Good night, and as always,
stay curious, stay informed, and stay